So now we've got all the images stored. Let's open up Flash, and this is the first screen that you'll see when you open up Flash. So what we're going to do, we're going to create a new Flash document. So just click on that, and for the first planet that we're going to animate, we're going to use the planet that's closest to the Sun, Mercury. So let's automatically save this file, save it as Mercury. Again, save it into your solar system folder, and we can just save this in this folder as Mercury. So we now got Flash open. We've saved the file already as Mercury so that we can keep continuing to save it. So let's just have a look at Flash. This area here, the white rectangle, is called the stage, and everything that is placed on this area on the stage will be shown in the animation. This area up here on the left are our tools that we can use to create and edit the animation, and over here on the right we have a number of different panels that allow us to set a number of different parameters within our animation. To open up any of these panels on this side, we simply go to Window and select the name of the panel that we want to view. The first stage for the Mercury animation is to rename this layer as Mercury. So if you just double click on the layer name, we can rename it to Mercury. You'll notice that as soon as we've changed something within the project, we get the little star up next to the file name, which means that the file hasn't been saved. So it's a good habit to get into, to save it as soon as you see the star. Rather than going up to the file menu and save every time, if we just press Ctrl and S on the keyboard, that's the shortcut to save. So our next step is to import the image of Mercury that we saved earlier. So if we just go to File, Import, Import to Stage, and locate the image of Mercury that we saved earlier. Double click on it to open it. And when you get this message here, don't change any of the settings, just press OK. And we can see if we scroll up to the top, the image of Mercury has been added to the stage. We'll notice that if we click on it and we have a look at the properties down here, it's been inserted as a movie clip, which is okay for what we need at the moment. So the first thing we need to do after we've inserted the planet is to align it to the centre of the stage. So if we select the planet and make sure we have this blue line around it, we need to make sure we've got this align window open over here. Again, if you haven't got it open, click on Window and select Align. We need to make sure that this to stage selector is selected, and it'll be highlighted if it is, and then we just click Align to the horizontal centre and to the vertical centre. We can now view the planet right in the centre of our stage. If we click on this drop down menu and select Fit in Window, we made sure that all of the stage is in this window here so we can see everything that's going on. Let's save it again, Ctrl and S. And now we need to add what we call a motion guide, which allows us to set the line that the planet will follow as it animates around the stage. So to do this, if we right click on the layer name and select Add Motion Guide, we then get this new layer up here. If we select what we call the blank keyframe there, and then choose the oval tool, make sure that the fill colour is set to transparent, and the pen colour or the stroke colour is set to a dark colour that we can see, and at least 1 in the stroke height, and simply draw an oval shape towards the centre of the stage. Now we've got the oval shape selected, as it's got the blue rectangle round. If you haven't got it selected, then just use the selector tool up here and click on the edge of the oval, and make sure that for Mercury the width of the oval is 300 and the height is 100. Now we've made sure that the width is 300 and the height is 100. If we make sure that it's selected again with the blue rectangle round, we can now align this to the centre of the stage also. So again, making sure the align to stage is selected. We select horizontal centre and vertical centre. Once this is in place, if we then use the padlock key to lock that area, that layer is now locked. I can't move anything on that layer at all. So now all we need to do is set the planet so that it animates around this guide that we've just established. If we zoom in to make this part easier, select 200%. The first thing that we need to do is try and get this circle into the centre of the image. To do this, we use the free transform tool, and we just click on the white circle and drag it so that it's in the centre. This is what we call the pivot point for the animation. And then select the selection tool again and move the planet so that the pivot point rests on the guide layer line. We then make sure that it's just aligned to the centre, and at this point we'll save it again, Control and S, and now we're ready to start animating the image. For Mercury, we're going to create what is called a new keyframe every 20 frames up until 60 frames. To create a new keyframe, let's make sure we've selected the Mercury layer, right click under frame 20 on the Mercury layer and select Convert to Keyframe. You'll notice that the guide layer has disappeared, as the guide layer is only visible on frame 1 of the timeline. To rectify this, if we right click under frame 20 on the guide layer, we select Insert Frame this time rather than Keyframe, as we don't need the keyframe on this layer. Repeat the process again under frame 40. So we right click on the Mercury layer, select Convert to Keyframe, right click on the guide layer, select Insert Frame, and finally again at 60 frames. So now we should have something that looks like this. A quick note about keyframes. Keyframes define the parameters of an object. So in this keyframe on the Mercury layer, this Mercury image is sitting at this point on the stage, it's this colour, and it's this size. At this keyframe, the image is still sitting at that point on the stage, it's still that size, and it's still that colour. We can change it now in this keyframe, and the original keyframe would remain as it was. So under frame 20, let's click on the keyframe for Mercury, click on the planet and drag it to about a third of the way around the oval, making sure that the pivot point remains on the guide line. So now at this keyframe, the planet is now sitting at this point on the stage. It's still the same size and the same colour. In fact, no other parameters have changed apart from just the position on the stage. If I click back into the original keyframe, the position is still as we set it originally. So I now need to click on the keyframe for Mercury under frame 40, and I need to move this to roughly 2/3 of the way around the guide, again making sure that the pivot point sits neatly on the guideline. So now if I take the red cursor back to frame 1, I can just click on it and drag, or I can just click on frame 1. If we press enter, we'll see that the frame that's displayed changes with the timeline until it reaches the end of the animation. And you'll notice that as the animation goes through, the position of the planet changes to where we set it according to each keyframe. The final thing that we need to do is to add what we call a tween, which generates the movement in between these keyframes. So we simply right click in between the keyframes and we select create motion tween, and we do that in between all the keyframes on this layer. Notice we haven't changed the guide layer at all. So now if I click back in frame 1, with the tween added in between each keyframe, the planet should animate smoothly around the guide. To see it in action, just press enter. And that's the first planet done. So let's save that again, Control and S. The guide layer is only visible in this project. When we come to publish the Flash movie at the end, we'll see that the guide layer disappears in the published movie.